I looked over at the other officer, faintly visible in the darkness. His eyes were huge. He didn't say a word. He just mouthed at me that he saw someone, then mouthed two more words at me. I whispered back, "A what?" He mouthed it again, "Scream mask." Before we begin, I want to give a disclaimer for this episode. It involves a real life crime scene, domestic violence, and graphic details that may not be suitable for all listeners. We're going into some dark corners of the human experience today. Listener discretion is advised. Middle-aged woman stepped out of the cruiser, calm as a Sunday morning. She'd just spent a few days in a mental health facility and was being brought back for an interview before a court appearance. The case officer opened the door for her, and before he could even lead her into the police station, she looked him dead in the eye and asked him a question that made the hair on the back of his neck stand up. She said, "Did you find the body?" In the last episode, I told you that gray just isn't about coal dust and uniforms. It's about the things that you can't explain. Sometimes it's about the darkness that hides behind a screen door in a typically quiet neighborhood. A local woman had taken in a drifter, a man she had met in New Orleans. She brought him home to Kentucky. Not long afterwards, police got a call about a domestic violence situation. When the officer showed up, she was calm, told the officer the man was gone. The officer took it that she meant he just headed out back on the road. He was a drifter after all. The officer, satisfied with her answer, cleared the call. A few days later, after a stint in a mental health facility where the workers said that she needed to speak to the responding officer, that same woman was being relayed back for an unrelated court appearance. I met the case officer at the local PD so he could interview her and then take her to the preliminary hearing that she had that was unrelated to anything else. As she stepped out of the cruiser and saw him, as they walked into the PD, she looked at that officer and asked him that question that chilled the air in the parking lot. "Did you find the body?" He called me right after that and sounded like something was wrong. "I think we need to go back to that house. I got a bad feeling." So I pulled up. He jumped into my cruiser with me as he had come out on his day off so that he could talk to the lady since she got relayed back into the county. On the way there, about a 10-minute drive, he gave me details of the complaint. Said days earlier he had been to this woman's house for the domestic call. When he asked where the guy was, she said, "He's gone now." He took that to mean that he had just left the area. He didn't search the house. Didn't feel like there was any need to. We pulled into the driveway just as daylight had begun to escape the holler, so we knew we had to work pretty quickly. The house was dark, but the front door was standing wide open, with only the screen door closed. We knocked and announced our presence. The only reply was from the 4 dogs that were on the other side of the screen door. Most mountain homes have dogs. The sound of dogs barking behind a locked door when the owner is gone is a universal sign of dread in law enforcement. This had dread all over it. 4 dogs barking at the front screen door with no lights on and cold temperatures outside gave me a very uneasy feeling about this whole situation. I went around to the back of the house to a small bathroom window. It was too high to see through, so I found something to stand on, just enough to get my eyes over the windowsill. I peered past the bathroom into the next room. It was dark, but I could make out an unmistakable shape on the floor. Motionless. I went back to the other officer and told him that we were going in. We popped the screen door open. The dogs didn't attack. They just bolted right past us and out into the yard. They'd been locked in that house for days with no food. They weren't guarding a secret anymore. They were just trying to survive. We moved into the dim living room, weapons out, flashlights cutting through the shadows. No lights were on in the house. It felt heavy. As we reached the end of the living room wall, the other trooper stopped. He froze. He looked back at me. His face was pale in the strobe of the flashlight, and I saw him mouth the words, "I see somebody on the floor wearing a scream mask." My eyes must have been the size of dinner plates. I mouthed back, "A what?" Slowly and deliberately, he said it again. "Scream mask." He pointed just out of my view. I mouthed, "Cover me," and I stepped around the corner. "Stay police! Show me your hands!" I reached for the wall switch that was right next to me, flipped the lights on. I stepped into that room, and my brain struggled to process what I was looking at. Lying on his back, staring at the ceiling through the distorted, elongated eyes of that 90s horror mask, I kept shouting for him to show his hands, but I already knew. He was stiff. I'd reached down, grabbed a shotgun with one hand, and with the other, I flipped that mask off his face. Beneath the plastic mask, it was a mess. Pills were scattered all over the man's face and the floor around him. He was an amputee. He only had the one arm. I rolled his body over slightly to check the pulse, even though it was evident he was DRT, dead right there, as we call it. There was a massive dried pool of blood and a gaping wound in his back. We canvassed the house and found buckshot holes in the living room paneling that we had just walked past. It was as if she was trying to paint a picture of a suicide, or of a movie scene, or some ritual that only made sense in the broken geography of her mind. She tried to stage a scene, tried to turn a tragedy into a movie set, thought the mask and the pills would hide the truth, but the gray reality of crime scenes always seemed to come to light. She was charged with his death, and I was left with another story for the ledger. Yeah, we found the body. Now, for those of you who are my age, that scream mask just wasn't a movie prop. It was a cultural icon. It was the face of the 90s horror boom. Seeing it on a movie screen at the theater in town was one thing. Seeing it in the beam of my maglite stuck on a human being who had been brutally ended, well, it twisted that piece of pop culture into something I'll never be able to unsee. This wasn't a case of a monster versus a victim. It was a woman who had reached a breaking point, a drifter looking for a home, and a mental health system that let both slip through the cracks. It's not black and white. It's the darkest shade of gray there is. Thank you so much for pulling up a chair and listening to this second episode of Into the Gray with DK Hall. Keep an eye out for episode 3 in the next few days. See you soon.